So when I was younger, I found myself comparing myself to other people all the time, and I mean all the time. I was always wanting to see how I stacked up to other people, what I was doing in comparison to them, how my lives were in comparison to them. And I would pretty much work my hardest just to earn the admiration and respect of other people. So right now I'm studying for my bachelor's in viola performance at the Cleveland Institute of Music. So for me, it was always something music related. So at my schools, in my youth orchestras, uh, friend groups, chamber music, anything like that. Whenever there was anybody else I could possibly compare myself to, well, I did it and pretty much found myself just constantly behind, essentially. So when I would compare myself to other people, I would pretty much be chasing a version that I saw of them. And then by the time I had, caught up or done something, to try and be up to par with whatever version I saw, there would always be something new. So there'd be some accolade, some accomplishment, some achievement, some social presence, or some praise or something that would just knock me right back down to square one, essentially. And I would find myself just pretty much in an endless loop over and over again, trying to, again, earn the respect and admiration of other people. It was honestly demoralizing and soul sucking. I mean, at a certain point, a realization kind of started to set in, and I started to think, that success might actually only be reserved for the people around me, but not myself. So if you can relate to any of those thoughts, and you probably do or have at some point, then you're probably entirely normal. Because the truth is, those thoughts are not really anything out of the ordinary. I mean, everybody in the history of ever has pretty much had those thoughts. It's not like they're any cause for concern. That being said, if they're occurring with any sort of frequency, especially any kind of unwanted frequency, there's probably a few things you're missing in regards to the way you think and to the way you react to not only your own life, but the people around you, because it's really all connected. So essentially, what you're doing when you have thoughts like these is self diminishing and self sabotaging the inherent built in value of your human life. Now, what do I mean by that? When I see the inherent built in value of your human life, now keep in mind that when we're born, we're essentially signed a contract. I mean, nobody chooses to be born. We're signed a contract for life, it's permanent, it's forever, and we really don't get to choose whether we're in here or not. I mean, I don't know of any human being who specifically got to observe life from a distance and, watch an entire lifetime without participating in it and being like, is that something I want to do? And then, sitting there watching for a few more minutes, few more years, few more seconds, being like, yeah, no, I'm going to pass up on that. Unfortunately, we're all just here basically against our own volition. And the only thing we really get to choose is what happens after we're already here in this sometimes pretty messed up world. But in a way it's invigorating. In a way it could be seen as sad, as tragic, but it is what it is. Regardless, we're getting way too into that to start for right now. But pretty much what that means is that all humans are essentially assigned as just as a baseline. I'm not, of course, not saying this as an always rule, but as a baseline, we actually all have the same amount of potential, the same amount of value as human beings. There's no real reason that one human being, just by the simple existence and fact of their being, has more value than another. It's just, if you think of this logically, you might want to automatically reject this thought, but just think of this logically. That is, by definition, and pretty much an inherent truth, that one human being is not less and also not more. So that's pretty much, it goes against what we automatically want to think. Is we have a tendency to diminish ourselves, but really it's a logical truth, and of course it's not that helpful on its own, but just it's something to think about, that we actually all have that same built-in value. So if you're in the middle of this and you're actually thinking, okay, that's great and all, but why in the actual hell is there an actual standing with two legs, two arms, human embryo, sitting in front of a camera trying to give me life advice? Uh, to that I say, good one. I know I probably have a baby face and my hair is crazy and I have a weird metal hairband in my hair right now, and I probably look ridiculous on camera. But regardless of all that, on a more serious note, I feel like I've been very fortunate and very blessed to have a lot of experiences and therefore a lot of realizations in my life earlier than most, or at least most people my age. So I just feel like I feel like I can speak on these issues. I mean, these are problems that I've seen in real life with real people. I mean, problems can pretty much weigh on someone's life, both in myself, and I've seen this both in myself and others, that these problems can just weigh you down, and it affects everything in your life because in a way, it is your life. At the same time, I've seen people get out of these situations. I've seen what can work for people, again, both for myself and for others. Again, everybody's not the same, and of course, my experience might not be a reflection of the entire human population. I'm not saying that it is, but I have seen what can help people, and I've seen what has helped me over the course of my life and the experiences that I've had. So my goal with this video, and the way I'm going to break this down, is essentially we're going to start with, I'm going to try and convince you and sell you on a few perspectives that you might already have, that we might already know, but really convince you that they are the truth. Because when you hold a lot of, a lot of negative, well, they're not necessarily negative, but when you hold a lot of thoughts that aren't necessarily accurate and we never really care to assess them, well, I'm going to have you try and assess the thoughts here and pretty much convince you on new perspectives that are helpful for a lot of things, and you'll see why. And then once we get off of all that woo-woo stuff, we're essentially going to talk about what's the practical things, the more applicable things you can actually start doing today to see a difference and to actually, see a reasonable, actual, rational change, because it's so easy to, get hyped up in your own motivation and to do all this stuff and be like, that was great, that was incredible, and then you go off and it's gone, like within a day, within a week, within a year, even a year. Even a year is still a short amount of time. Keep in mind, a year is still a short amount of time. So that's the way we're going to do this, starting with those thoughts. And I'm going to have this makeshift teleprompter here in front of me that I hope isn't too distracting. My eyes may avert down, but I'll try and keep my eyes on the camera since I'm trying to talk to you and I'm not reading off of a script necessarily. They're just vague bullet points. Okay. Fuck. Oops. Sorry, technical difficulties. I'm trying to waste your time. So the first thing we're going to do is reframe some thoughts that I think are actually illusions. So the very first one may sound very generic, but essentially when you see other people succeeding, and when you see whatever it is that you have as your perception of a person, if you don't really, really know the person, I mean on a on a level that is very, very personal, that most people don't have with almost anyone save for maybe a few people in their life, anything you see is essentially just a highlight reel. What I mean by a highlight reel is pretty much that person's curated collection of what they want other people around them to see. So a very common, not very common, a very notable example of this is obviously social media, because in that sense, we are quite literally building and posting, the pictures, the descriptions, the views, the exact things that other people will see. And we get to choose that, and we get to call that ourselves. Of course, especially nowadays, our accounts are essentially considered an alternate version of ourselves. I mean, the online world is huge, and it's crazy that we're living through that right now. But it's honestly makes sense if you think about it. That humans don't readily show their weaknesses, and it makes sense if you think about it, because humans can be very ruthless to each other. But you have to keep in mind that when you see anything at all, pretty much, it's pretty much only it's a person showing themselves the way they want to be seen, and you really don't get to see what's under the surface, and you don't actually know what the truth is. So I'll bring up a very another example of this, but a very specific example of this, that is fitness online, whatever, physiques. When people post their physiques online, when they're getting in shape or anything, this goes both for men and women. But when someone posts a picture of themselves shirtless of their physique online, what do? They're most certainly not going to take off their shirt halfway randomly through the day, snap the first picture and send it, which is what their physique actually looks like on a daily basis. What happens? People work out, they get their muscles pumped, they make sure that their stomachs aren't bloated, they find the right camera angle, they take several pictures under that angle, they make sure the lighting is good, They might even go in after the fact and literally, actually, physically edit the picture, which is obviously not reality. But even without editing the picture, they are still essentially manipulating the reality so other people can see exactly what it is they want to see. So it's honestly kind of weird because you never really actually know what you're seeing. So it's generally better just to accept and assume that it's probably just some sort of a highlight reel. So the second thing that could be the case is that a person actually is excelling in a given area or field, because obviously that can be the case. But when you have to keep in mind when you see other people is that, well, I'll just put it this way. When other people, especially when you see somebody that has a lot of success in a given field or area, it is most usually at the sacrifice of many other fields in life. What do I mean by this? Well, I'm gonna I'm gonna call them games. I think I don't remember. This idea appears somewhere else if you look at other sources, but people call it several games in life. So, you know, relationships, or certain relationships with different people would be, many games. A hobby is a game. Everything, essentially, any given area in your life that you can possibly apply effort to is considered a game. And of course, not because it's not serious, it's just the general name for it. Kind of like mini games inside of a big game, because the big game is just life. But, you know, when people seem like they're excelling in a given field and you actually start to pay closer attention, there's actually a pretty good chance that these people have other problems in their lives that they're burdened with, and that they actually have a lot of unhappiness that you, again, don't see on the surface because people don't readily and apparently show their weaknesses. In fact, I would actually go a step further and say that with almost complete certainty, any person that you see sharing anything positive, really, and not that the positive thing isn't very positive and great, but with almost complete certainty, I can say that that person has many other problems in their lives that they're burdened with, and they actually aren't happy with their situation or entirely happy with their situation. You might think that's an exaggeration. You might think that I'm overframing things, but it's honestly the case more often than you would think. Because the reality is, everyone struggles and everyone has bad thoughts and bad days. Everybody. So, this is the first applicable thought exercise and thing that I want you to try and do with me. And I actually want you to sit down and do this right now. Now, if you're listening to this in the background, or you're doing this in more than one sitting, or you're in the middle of something, or whatever, fair enough. Do what you want to do. You do why. Sorry, there's something on my shirt. But I actually want you to sit down and do this sometime. So, we're going to try and draw out something, essentially, whatever it is that makes you, that, draws that type of comparison that maybe causes some sort of sensation of inadequacy in yourself, some insecurity, something. It could be a person, it could be a situation. Most accurately for this, it probably should be some type of person. Again, not trying to use them in a negative way necessarily, but really, really just get something, and we're going to do something with it. So the first thing is you're going to picture all those accomplishments, all those accolades, again, under that person, that situation. Probably should be a person for this, for what I'm about to say. But just picture all of the accomplishments, the things that you find yourself comparing to, and really just let that sink in and just feel it. It's great, isn't it? Must be great. Must be awesome. Maybe it is. But the next thing you're going to do is actually start building out the daily life of that person. So you can start simple and say, what time do they wake up? Okay. And what's the first thought that pops into their head when they wake up? What are they thinking about? What do they have to think about first thing when they wake up? What time do they go to bed? What do they have to think about right before going to bed? And what's really nagging on their mind? Now, what type of food do they eat? How often do they eat? How much do they get to eat? What's their health like generally? What does their body feel like to walk around in? Is it in good shape? Does this person have good body image of their own body? How are their relationships with the people that they talk to in their life? How are their relationship with their family, with their significant other, if that's applicable? And then how's their financial situation? I mean, what I'm trying to get at is that there are so many games in life, and to fixate on just one of them is silly because the truth is you're going to feel almost all of them. So having success in one field in the way you might fix it on another person is really not representative of what someone's actual daily experience is in and out. Because keep in mind, this person, whatever details you start throwing in, keep in mind, this is what this person lives through day in and day out for years. So you might initially be tempted to put in some very perfect details, something that really maybe is in line with what you've seen with the rest of this person. But keep in mind, people don't show their weaknesses. What they have in their daily life, again, in all the areas that I just mentioned, might not actually be what you think it is. So really sit down and ask yourself every time you throw in another detail, every time you put something into that, imaginary schedule that we're making up right now, and ask yourself, is this actually something that's real, or are you kind of just making this up because it seems to be in line? Because I think what you'll find when you actually think critically about all of the thoughts that you put in, you'll start to realize that, oh, well, all of these areas aren't actually that perfect to begin with, because the truth is they really aren't on almost everyone. There's always issues. And again, this is just to mention general games. That's not to mention actual physical acute issues that come up in people's lives, which are, trust me, so common. You think it's just you, but everybody has issues all the time. They really do. So, I mean, I'm not sure what exactly it is that makes us fixate on other people so much. It seems like younger people now have more mental health issues than they used to. Again, I say as a young person, but I'm not sure if it's some sort of symptom of social media, or if social media, because again, we're living in an age right now that's wild, where there's an entire separate universe practically online. And that online universe, I mean, sometimes it feels like recently, especially coming out of the pandemic, that it almost feels like the online world holds more weight than the real life world now. When you have an interaction with someone in person, it seems like it's of less value than making a post online. Sorry, not to sound like a boomer, but it's just, it's kind of weird. And again, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, because you're building out this fake persona online that isn't really the real humanity of a person. So I don't know if social media maybe has just been a vessel. Maybe it's actually been a good thing that helps create more awareness for mental health issues, and that's why it seems more prevalent now. And it's actually been the case forever, or if it's actually causing a share of the issue itself. I'm not sure, and I don't think anybody really knows the answer. But personally, I do think that it's probably social media that is partially to blame for certain mental health issues. Again, I'm not trying to make a blanket statement here, but again, that's also past the scope of this video. So the third idea, and I don't want you to confuse the past two ideas that I just said as, well, the first thing being that someone might not actually, so again, we're going to go back and refresh the two things that I've said so far. The first thing is that someone might not actually have the level of success or the level of whatever it is. Again, I'm not sure what exactly it is that you're thinking about right now, but someone might not actually have an exact level of success or whatever it is. And two is, even if they do, it most likely is not enough to outweigh and all of the other games in life, because there are many. So third is that someone might actually be winning in a lot of games. I don't want the last 2 points to be interpreted as you should be happy and you should be satisfied, because other people's lives suck. So, your life sucks, other people's lives suck, everybody sucks. No, not necessarily. There are actually some pretty great human specimens out there. I mean, there are people who truly can come pretty close to winning in most of the games that matter, anyways. I mean, I don't want this to be some sort of feel good type of content that's pretty useless overall. It's just telling you, oh, don't worry about other people. They don't matter, because other people matter a lot, and other people might not necessarily be doing worse than you. Maybe they're doing better than you in some ways. I don't know. But the truth is that even when you compare yourself to these people, first of all, keep in mind that these people aren't even everyone. Again, I'm making a blanket term about people. I'm calling them, making a general these people about people who are excelling in many areas, who truly do have genuinely very happy lives and are simultaneously excelling in their career or their field. But keep in mind, that's certainly not everyone. And I think most of the time you'll actually find that they'll fall into category 1 or category 2, not category 3. That being said, category 3 definitely still exists. That being said, what they're doing actually still doesn't matter whatsoever. And I'll explain why. So we're going to go back to the topic of inherent human value. So when you find yourself comparing to other people, usually there's some mental reason for it, obviously. But when you actually sit down and analyze the reason, you can find some interesting things. I'll just put it that way. But I'll first try and convince you again on the inherent value. So what I mean is essentially when you're born, you have an automatic amount of value of potential in your life. And I'm not saying again that, because I don't want, this is not something that's necessarily it's like some woo-woo point that I'm trying to make. But really, it's important that you really wrap your head around it, because when you have the realization, and it's logical and it's completely inherent, and you actually start to realize how baseline it is that all human beings are essentially made equal. I mean, we're all cut from the same cloth again, and we're all worth the same amount in flesh and bone. We are quite literally, in all the ways that matter, reasonably the same. And of course, we have different contributions to society, and there may be different levels, and human beings can vary wildly. But at the end of the day, we all have the same amount of soul. It's pretty much all there. So, if that was the case, then why does it actually matter what other people are doing when you're, I guess what I'm trying to say is that everybody is equal, and most commonly humans will try and diminish their own value because, well, because we're the ones experiencing it quite literally. If you were watching us externally, you'd probably think differently about yourself than what most people have their self-conception, because self-consciousness is probably the most difficult thing for humans to cope with. If we weren't self-conscious, we could just observe, not exist in any form, that would, well, it would fix, it'd be different. I'll just put it that way. So imagine if you were observing, would you maybe think the negative thoughts that you think about yourself? Most likely not, at least not in the same way. So when you actually find yourself comparing something to other people, it's usually useful to actually sit down and ask yourself, and this is going to get really uncomfortable, but this is essentially the second thought exercise that I want you to do. And it's not necessarily one that's as directly like finishable as the last one that I was talking about, or something that you can really get done at all, really, but still it's something that you should try, and you should think about, and you can maybe come back to every now and again. And it's a little bit uncomfortable, and it's, again, I'm not there with you, so nobody's going to hear your answer, so just do it in your own head or out loud if that helps, I guess. But really ask yourself, when you're comparing to something, or when it is something that you're comparing to, something that you want, something that it is that you're driving towards, that you feel is lacking value or something. I mean, you know what it is specifically. I'm trying to narrow down vague thoughts so I can try and pinpoint what it is, but you already know what you're thinking, and I don't know what exactly it is for you, but you do. So I probably don't have to keep guessing around as to what it is. You know what it is. But when you have that thought, actually sit down and ask yourself, why do I really actually want this? And again, it's might sound generic at first, but actually, if you've actually, I mean, if you've actually ever sat down and done this, I mean, really believed in it, you'll find you can actually get some really interesting stuff. And at the very least, even if it's not necessarily the most helpful thing to you, at the very least, you'll find something interesting, and it may spark a new perspective that will help in other ways. But actually sit down and ask yourself, why? And trust me, the why matters. So keep thinking about it. And I'm going to give, you can come up, you should come up with your own answers in your head, but I'll give a few examples and ask yourself, why are you doing this? And why is it that your mind is fixating on this? Is it fear? Is it resentment? Is it jealousy? Is it some type of insecurity? Is it validation from other people? I mean, it could be a slew of things. I mean, and you can probably see what I'm getting at here. So again, you can come up with your own answers. Now really analyze your answer, and you might find that at the end, you still do want to pursue this thing or this whatever it is. I'm not saying it's not like uh, it's not like these human thoughts are representative of everything. But what matters is that what you're doing is based on yourself and not based on other people. So if you decide that you actually do still want to carry on with your thought, and again, I'm not trying to destroy your thought, because I think those thoughts are actually some of the most important things for humans in general. Because what I'm not trying to say is that you're already perfect and that you don't have to do anything and that you just need to learn to be happy the way you are and do nothing whatsoever. That's not what I'm saying. But really ask yourself, is it that you feel proud to do this? I mean, can you actually feel proud to say you're doing this? Both not only to yourself, no, excuse me, other way around. Not to other people, but especially to yourself. I mean, truly, if other people, regardless of the opinions of other people and the validation of other people, is this something that actually brings an appreciable level of value to your life, that you can actually feel like this is something you want to base your life around? Because all those emotions I said before, keep in mind, fear, resentment, jealousy, and validation, they're not necessarily negative thoughts in and of themselves, or at least, well, I mean, kind of, but there's not necessarily anything wrong with those things specifically. But keep in mind that whatever it is that comes up in that thought exercise that you think of, that's essentially revealing what you're basing your life around. And if you don't want to base your life around fear, don't want to base your life around needy validation, around insecurity, around jealousy, and around resentment, and the truth is most people really don't. And if you find that you do, weird, but of course you do you. I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life. I'm just trying to help you find the way you actually want to live your life and not the way other people want you to live your life. Because for most people, fear, resentment, validation, all those things that I mentioned are actually going to be negative things. And obviously we inherently, just hearing those words out loud, know that those are negative things. That's just the way most humans are conditioned and the way most humans inherently think as well. So when you actually do want to carry on, again, are you proud to do this to yourself? Does this actually bring an appreciable level of value? And it's really hard because only you know the real answer to those questions, and nobody else can really help you and tell you exactly what it is that you need to do, or exactly if something is worth pursuing or not. So the truth is, if you find value in something, and if it actually is something that you find you actually get something out of it in your life, and you know it's good for you, then honestly don't let anybody tell you that it's not, because the answer is going to vary for everyone, and you very well may be onto something. So again, I'm going to say this once more. Don't confuse the statements, your life has inherent value and purpose, with you're already perfect right now, no matter what you do. Because clearly, I'm trying to find a way towards this. If everything was already perfect, then you'd already feel perfect. So I think the drive for change and the drive to seek something better for humans is entirely natural, and in fact, it's something we should often pursue. We have to make sure we're pursuing the right thing and something that actually fills us up and doesn't actually tear us down mentally, something that really feels like it's building us up and building up the people around us. So the external outcomes will often actually look the same. So for example, we're going to use the example of getting in shape and fitness again, but if you're, well, yeah, we'll use that example again. So let's take two people who both went from less in shape to more in shape. We'll just say very generally, because the specifics are not the point. But the first person is thinking and chose to get in shape firstly for the validation of other people, uh, to be able to kind of feel good about themselves in comparison to other people and kind of be able to put other people down. Worse, they might actually want to physically, use their physical strength to harass people, or at the very least to make sure that other people can't impose their will on them, or make sure that they can impose their will on other people. And this person just is always doing workout regimens, whatever it is, things that they pretty much genuinely hate doing, essentially just to hope that the end result might be worth it, and that all of the uh, goodies that we talked about might might just be enough to outdo all the terrible things they're doing. Things they hate doing, I should say. The second person is getting in shape, and they're doing it because they feel a spiritual connection to their self and to their body, and they currently feel that their body is just not a reflection of the way they want to be and the way that they think of themselves spiritually and what they want to be like and what they want to contribute to others. And they actually, in a way, and it's not that they don't care what other people think, but they care what other people think in a way for the people that they care about, and because they also believe it and they know they maybe want better health for other people, for people in their life, again, significant others or family, if that's could be the case, or something else. But regardless, it's something that they want to do, and they do it through exercise, through workout regimens that they actually enjoy, that they feel they spiritually connect to. They might enjoy, whatever form of cardio it is, combined with some form of maybe strength training. They actually physically feel is invigorating to their body and to their mind, and they also end up getting in shape, just as in shape as the person before them. Now, if you compare these two people, are they the same? I mean, again, they're both in shape. Externally, they look exactly the same. They're both in shape people. They went from being less in shape to being more in shape. And they both accomplished their goal in the same amount of time. Are they the same? Is the outcome the same? Technically, yes, but I think what you'll start to realize, and obviously it's probably been made obvious by the very extreme examples that I made in this case. Of course, life isn't always that black and white, but you can see why this external outcome might not necessarily actually matter as much as where it originates from. I remember the difference between toxic change, vanity, for validation, for whatever it may be, fear, resentment. The difference between that and the difference between truly purposeful, nearly spiritual change, again, in whatever it may be, a career, a path in life, whatever it is. I mean, again, I keep trying to find your thought, but you already have it, so I don't need to give it to you. You have it. I'll try and be less specific from now on. But whatever it is, it's essentially where it originates from that actually matters, not the external outcome itself. They might look the same, but make no mistake, they are absolutely not. And a lot of what you already need is in your brain. You just need to really have the courage to put aside whatever beliefs you might have, put aside whatever thoughts you might have, and just go in there and just see what you find, because you often find a lot of things. So, more technical difficulties. I'm sorry. Okay. So, along with the idea of inherent human value, we're going to talk about kind of a sidetrack, but I'm going to explain why it's related and why it actually matters for what we're talking about. But we have a responsibility to be kind to the people around us, to be compassionate, whatever words it is that you want to use. The point is, whatever words you have for being nice to other people, we have a duty to do that. But keep in mind that you actually can't pour from an empty cup. A lot of people try to do this. We're often told that we should be selfless just for the sake of other people without expecting any benefit in return. But the truth is that when you're actually truly compassionate and when you're doing it properly, and you're kind to other people around you, always hospitable, no matter what, always showing respect to other people, no matter what, it's actually one of the best things you can do for yourself. You might be thinking, wait a minute, for yourself, I mean, kindness shouldn't be for yourself. You're kind to other people, not because you get any benefit out of it, right? Right, technically true in a few ways, but what I mean is not that you are putting other people down for the sake of bringing yourself up. What I mean is that you're actually bringing everybody up. And what I mean by everybody is everybody including yourself. Because again, what I'm getting at is that yourself matters exactly as much as everybody around you, not less and not more. I mean, in the most literal sense, you have a moral obligation to take care of yourself, and to emotionally destroy yourself internally is just the same as emotionally abusing another person externally. You just feel differently about it because of our human self-consciousness and because of our kind of, well, yeah, self-consciousness is the best word for it, but that's the way humans automatically think. But the truth is that we're on the same level as everybody around us. Now, if you've heard of the golden rule, it's kind of, well, it's something we're taught as kids. but it is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And in a lot of ways, I mean, some people think of that as essentially the most basic North Star type of uh, guideline for moral human behavior. And it makes sense if you think about it. Because, yeah, do unto others what I do to them, and they'll do to me. And then that way everybody will take care of each other and nobody will go around stabbing and murdering each other because, well, most people probably don't want to be stabbed and murdered. And most people will probably take this. And the way that this is probably generally interpreted, even like most commonly between all people, not just young people or little kids, but everybody, is just be nice to others always, no matter what. But I'm actually going to suggest that what it really means is an equation. Is that other people should be placed exactly on the same value hierarchy as you. And I mean that you should not bring other people down and be stereotypically selfless and kind of helping other people out just for the sake of helping them out and for the good of humanity and leaving yourself to die and sacrificing yourself. That is honestly just as awful as stomping down other people for the sake of yourself, is to bring up other people at the sacrifice of yourself, at the expense of yourself. Now, that might be a controversial statement in and of itself, but if you think about it, it really is the most inherent logical truth. And oftentimes, it might actually, worse, it might actually be an excuse to not do the hard work of taking care of ourselves, just kind of spilling out and helping other people so we don't have to do the hard thing of taking care of ourselves. But if you think about it, when you're actually sacrificing yourself, you're still hurting others in the future. Most directly and most notably, it's essentially all of the people who have to be in relationships with you later in life as you essentially sacrifice yourself. And I don't mean only romantic relationships. Again, relationship is just a word for any regular human interaction and connection that you have with another person. As you can hurt people. You can hurt people very much by being mentally unhealthy. By being mentally unhealthy. Trust me, it's very much a thing. And to take care of yourself actually is almost an investment for the people around you later in life. Not, also right now, but especially later in life, because I mean later in life, again, I don't know. I'm not talking about any specific age when I say later in life. I just mean later in general. Because when other people have to be around a person that's mentally unhealthy, and likewise, I mean, or sorry, on the opposite hand of that, when you're around a person that's healthy, it brings everybody up. And you can honestly use yourself as a tool to help humanity, not because they matter more than you, but because they matter exactly as much as you, because you're a part of them. So when you actually learn, and I'll kind of talk a little bit more practically in the day-to-day, but if you actually just in your daily interactions try and really see eye to eye to people, not putting them above you, not patronizing people. I mean, even regardless of age, I'm not saying don't treat kids like they're kids, because if you're talking to a 4-year-old boy, that's a 4-year-old boy. It does, you're not gonna be like, how do you do? And then when he doesn't give you a proper answer, you're not gonna punch him in the face for being rude to you. That's a 4-year-old boy, obviously. But even with kids, and just in general, you shouldn't be patronizing with people. At the same time, you shouldn't be pedestalizing of people or anything that could be the opposite. Really, the best target and the best thing to do in general for most relationships is just to see exactly eye to eye as equals with everybody. And again, I'm not saying that you can't from time to time put yourself first, or at time to times you should put others first, actually, because those cases most certainly exist. And narcissism and arrogance is very much a real thing, and trust me, that's no good either. But most people already know that and inherently avoid that. I think the more common problem is that people put themselves down. But you'll actually start to tap into the humanity of people, and you'll start to see, well, if you weren't already doing this before, and trust me, it's kind of a spectrum. It's not necessarily like you're on or off with this, but if you really try and do this, most of the time, you'll end up finding that you make some, excuse me, if you're actually thinking about it critically and you make some realizations as you're doing it, you'll start to realize you actually see a lot more humanity in people. You'll find more things you have in common with people. You'll suddenly start to almost enjoy spending time with people more, not because the people actually become any better. In fact, you'll actually start to see their weaknesses more, and at the same time, they're well, I'm trying not to sound like hippie, but you'll start to see their soul more. You really will see the soul of a person, and It's honestly something beautiful, and it's something that really, in my opinion, makes up the meat of life. Like, it's not really something that can be replicated by anything else. I think humans' drive to interact with other humans is probably one of the most powerful things that we have. And in the exact same way, using kindness and compassion and making sure that everybody is treated the same on the same level is equally powerful and just brings up pretty much every area in your life. So, in general, we're going to start to get into some of the more practical tips here, but I'm sorry, I hope I'm not shivering on camera right now. I'm in a garage right now, and it's quite cold. I'll be honest, it's a little cold, and this is warm water. Okay, but to get into some of the more practical tips, I'll just be honest. In general, real true change is usually slow. I don't have any secret to sell you. I don't have any I don't have any hidden agenda. Because what I'm going to tell you right now is straight up that whatever you want to do and whatever you want to change and whatever it is that made you keep watching this far into the video, I don't know how many minutes have passed, but enough that most people should have clicked off. I mean, this is a one take video with a guy sitting in front of a camera talking to you about things that are generally considered boring in comparison to what you could be watching right now on YouTube. Probably if you scroll down and look at your sidebar, I mean, look at all the things you could be watching. Instead, you're sitting through this. Good for you. Good for you. But it's going to be work. It's going to be effort. It's going to be motivation. It's going to be discipline. It's whatever words you want to use, whatever grind set, Andrew Tate buzzwords you want to use about this whole thing. The point is, it's going to cost something. But I can guarantee you, and I can absolutely guarantee you, that all of this shit is worth it. Absolutely. I mean, so many people spend a lot of time working towards things without any real conception of what they're doing. And in that sense, effort is not worth it. So I don't know what you've been doing, and I don't know exactly what your situation is. But within mind that I don't have a secret formula to sell you, I'm going to give you the secret formula right now. And it's very simple and it's dumb, but it's still worth kind of pointing out because sometimes you might lose sight of it. But when you want to change something, well, I'll just put it this way. The next sentence is going to be stupid, but trust me. When you, no, I'm sorry. What was I going to say? My my bullet points aren't helping me. Right. When, sorry. When you apply consistent, predictable effort to the right areas in the right amounts, you can actually see change faster. I mean, much faster than you probably realize. And even though I just said this isn't anything that's going to change overnight or something that is any type of what is this equivalent of a get rich quick scheme, but we're not talking about money here. Get uh, get brain quick scheme. That doesn't work. But really, even though it's going to be a lot of work, when you actually start applying your effort in the right areas, you'll see that change can actually be a whole lot faster than you thought. There's really no reason, and you shouldn't actually apply your effort to things that aren't actually helping you. I mean, if you don't feel like something is actually giving you a return on what you're giving it, then you shouldn't be doing it. And so many people just don't. So many people, I mean, everybody, not so many people. It's not like it's a negative thing that makes you a bad person, because I'm guilty myself of this all the time. And the truth is, it's never going to be perfect, and everybody does to some extent. But the thing is, we should try and catch ourselves in it. Is that we just generally tend to keep doing what we've been doing, and we don't often stop and think if something is actually helping us for a desired goal, or what a goal even is, if there even is a goal in mind, and if we do have a goal, if that goal is actually helpful to us in any way, or if it's something that, like we said before, that actually brings something appreciable to our life, or if it's just kind of something that we're doing just to do. But really, when you aren't held back anymore by nagging thoughts that don't really hold a lot of weight, and you essentially instead focus all your energy on things that actually matter, the path to happiness, and well, I'm going to take another side note here, sorry, but happiness is actually not a term for joy, and it's not something that you should actually pursue in the sense of being happy all the time, or being concerned and thinking that something is wrong if you're not happy all the time. Instead, what we're talking about when we say happiness, or when I'm talking about when I say happiness, is instead a kind of a general sense of contentment, of uh, purpose. I'm trying to think of other words that might be applicable here, but essentially, you know what you're doing and why, and you feel genuinely human in what you're doing, and you feel a real reason to wake up in the morning. Maybe it's not great, and might not be joy that you're feeling first thing in the morning. It might not be joy that you're feeling in your daily life at all for certain periods of time, but you can still have that baseline contentment and happiness. That's what I mean when I say happiness. So with that in mind, the path to happiness, not joy, can actually be much simpler than most people realize, truly. And this is, keep in mind, this is your whole life. When we talk about happiness, this is literally, by definition, whether implicitly or not, this is what everybody truly wants. It's just to be happy with their lives. Well, maybe not everybody. I don't know if I can actually speak for everybody, but really we do things because we want to feel good about the things that we're doing. That makes total sense, right? But that can actually be so much simpler than we often make it, spending our whole lives doing things that really just don't matter. Now, it's not to say that it's going to be easy, because simple and easy are not the same thing. But what it does mean is that as you're approaching whatever it is that you want, whatever it is that you're working towards, when you have that simple goal in mind, it's not going to be easy because it's never truly going to be accomplished in the first place, actually. But when you have simplicity in mind, you can actually start to live your life. And when you do things, you know why you're doing them. You feel a true spiritual purpose behind what you're doing. And again, when I say spiritual, I'm not talking about a certain religion. I'm not saying you have to believe in our Savior Jesus Christ or anything. But spiritual belief is essentially the core of what humans do. So whatever it is that you hold, it doesn't have to be any sort of religion even. You don't even need to be part of a specific church. But spirituality is an incredibly important thing in human life, and it is the backbone. So whatever it is that you think of when you actually stop and think for weeks on end on what the meaning is behind your life, whatever answer you come up with is your spirituality. And again, this is something that changes and should change over the course of your life, but keep that in mind. But when you, oh yeah, totally lost my train of thought. Sorry, but when you're actually chasing simplicity and cutting out the things that don't matter, you can actually start to live your life spiritually with a sense of purpose and clarity in everything that you're doing. And I guess a good word you might think of is truth. That you'll start to feel kind of a sense of truth in your life. Just, you won't really have a question about what you're doing anymore because you truly, honestly believe in what you're doing. And you don't have any reason to doubt yourself because you've done the hard work of going in there and really analyzing and curating what it is that you do in your day-to-day life to be something that you really do believe in. Now, I know we're not talking about everything right now. This started off with a specific belief of comparing yourself to other people, but this really is something that's applicable to a lot of areas in life. So I encourage you to do so and apply this to a lot of areas in your life. And I think you'll find some interesting things when you do that. Hopefully I can expand my ideas into other videos later, but yeah, right now, for now, we're just talking about this. But really, go off on your own and try and apply your thinking to other areas of life. You'll find some interesting stuff. So then how do we actually make change happen for reals? And this is going to get even more into the practical side of things. But truth is, nobody, including myself, actually knows what you need to do to make a change in any given field of your life. And unfortunately, I can't actually give you the solution to your problem, whatever your problem is in general, because I don't know you. And even if I did, I can't see inside your mind and I can't feel what you're feeling. So when you seek advice from anybody, it's another opinion. I'm not saying that other people's advice doesn't hold validity, because obviously it does. There are people that we should very much listen to, like our doctor, from time to time, maybe, perhaps. But you are the only person that actually truly knows your situation. It doesn't matter how close you are to somebody, they will never, ever see life through your eyes and in your skin, as much as they might want to. And again, this is not a negative thing because this is just a fact of human life. But other people are never going to truly, truly know what you're going through. So you pretty much, when you want to do something, it's good to get in the habit of thinking critically, of experimenting, and of essentially doing things yourself. So, those two things that I just said, critical thinking and experimentation, are very much your friend, and they are definitely applicable here. So, critical thinking and experimentation are something that you do on tools, and you should essentially be analyzing your tools all the time and trying to think of why you're doing something, or why you, or I should say, the systems that you have in place to get to a desired goal. Now, the work done of thinking of, sorry, I'm stumbling over my words like hell here, but when you do the work in your head, there we go, I'll say it that way. You do the work in your head of ascertaining why you really want a goal, and making sure that it's something that you want to dedicate your life to. Because again, when you have a big goal, you are, in a sense, dedicating your life to something, even if you're not spending all of your time doing it necessarily, because you shouldn't be. But you do that in your head. But then it's the systems and it's the processes that you lay out after the fact that are a little bit more practical to actually determine and get you to that goal. So I'll bring up the example of fitness again, just so I can give you some practical examples so you know what I'm getting at. But tools can be quite literally anything, any system, any process that helps you get to your given goal. Whatever methods you're using to do something, that's a tool. So in the case of fitness, getting in shape, whatever, that could be an accountability partner. That's a tool. The workout regimens that you're doing, the diets that you're following are all tools. It could be a literal tool, like some app that you're using to track things. It could be a different way of thinking, could be considered a tool. Any habit could be considered a tool. These are all tools. So no one actually knows what tools you need to succeed at whatever your given task is, but you do need to use critical thinking and your own mind to both determine what tools you're already using and if they're actually worth the effort you're investing in them. Because if they're not, you should actually look into replacing whatever tools you're using, but also seeking out new tools and constantly trying to find other new perspectives to think if you could potentially replace something with a tool that might actually be better fitting for the job. Because really, that's what everything comes down to. And critical thinking and experimentation will tell you a lot if you really just listen to your mind, because it's your greatest weapon, and human minds are wacky and they can do a lot of wild things if you let them. So it can really give you an edge to just listen to your brain and try and think critically. So with that in mind, I don't know what will work for you, but for this exact topic that we're talking about in comparison to others, here are some suggestions that I've seen work, that have worked for myself, and that I truly think will work for sounds like something just broke its neck outside, like a large animal on the roof of this place. Anyways, with in mind that I don't actually know what tools are going to help you, these are the ones that I think you should give a try and that you should actually really give a chance and think about, because they're probably going to be useful to you. So will you stop that? Seriously. Okay, number one, sorry, I have three tools that I think are worth your time. So the first one is quite simply just not to feed yourself too many highlight reels. As obvious as it sounds, the brain is pretty much automatically going to ingest anything that you give, anything that it sees, anything that is presented with. You don't really get to pick and choose what comes into your brain, what doesn't, what it uses. Your brain just automatically puts together a picture with what it has, and it pretty much is what it is. But what you can choose is what your brain sees in the first place. So, in the most literal sense, if you're just feeding yourself highlight reels, and this could be social media, this could be in person, this could be whatever it is, if you're just feeding yourself constant highlight reels, then it's no wonder that your brain is going to put together a picture where everybody is superior than you, because all it experiences is your daily life. Your brain can't see your brain doesn't ingest the posts of yourself because you're the one that made them. It only interprets the best of all the other people, but it knows all of your weaknesses, whereas it doesn't know the weaknesses of other people. So simply control your consumption in some way. And again, like I said, this is going to take experimentation. You'll have to pick and see exactly what's going to work best for you. But in general, moderation is king. And there is going to be some sweet spot for you of what is, for example, too much or too little social media. So think about that. Number two is to train the thoughts that you want to have. So this is where things might start to get a little bit controversial, and I don't want this to sound like pseudo-psychology, but I found this to really be the case, and I truly, honestly believe that this is the truth, uh, regardless of what the general opinion on it might be. But whatever thoughts your brain is used to hearing and whatever it's inherently carrying around is essentially going to be what it interprets as reality. So we obviously see this in parenting. When a child is told something from a very young age and it's carried out for a very long time, just essentially reinforcing the same thought over and over again, the child and the brain, even as it matures into adulthood, continues to see that as the truth pretty much forever. And this is also the case for positive thoughts. People who are brought up with great parents, whatever it might be, these people can generally carry very good attitudes into their later lives because it's been reinforced again and again. So whether you're behind or whether you're ahead, it doesn't really matter. I mean, of course, our childhood is very important, but you can retrain your thoughts. You truly can. So don't feel like you're behind if you might be carrying a lot of negative thoughts, I'm trying to say, but you really can help yourself a lot after the fact. It's just going to take a little bit of effort. That's all. It's not much more than that. So in general, what do I mean? It could be different for everybody. You could find that thinking to yourself for a specific amount of time each day on the thoughts that you think, and again, we're talking about first analyzing which thoughts it is that you might not want, analyzing which thoughts it might be that you do want, and finding some way to involve them in some way in your life. So it could be sitting down for an amount of time per day, thinking on and really just reinforcing and affirming yourself on why those thoughts, the positive thoughts, whatever the ones that you actually want, on why they're true. Or it could be writing, it could be physically saying something out loud if you find a specific sentence that's effective. But it's pretty much going to be, that's essentially what it's going to be. For yeah, I can't think of any other specifics. Well, no, you're smart. You can think of other things, of course. I don't need to feed you everything. But the point is that you should essentially try and have your thoughts be the ones that you want to feel. And it doesn't mean that you are going to have those thoughts 24/7 or that it's going to be perfect. And if you slip up and have a bad thought for any specific amount of time before that, you should feel bad about yourself. But just still, try and train your thoughts. Just put a little bit more effort in and find what processes might work for you. And you'll find that over time, you can actually start to feel a bit of a different perspective from those thoughts, from introducing your mind to different thoughts and really trying to tear down old ones that really shouldn't be there in the first place, as much as you need to create new thinking patterns and perspectives. So the third thing is a biggie, and it's a thing that could be a 12-hour video on its own and is too big for anyone to really talk about entirely, but that is to pay attention to your relationships. So just in general, for the sake of this exact video, because again, we could talk about this for a very, very long time, but in general, what you should think about is do not allow other people to put you down or make you feel like you are less or inadequate if you don't want that to be the case. So this is easier said than done, I know, but really honestly think about this. And I mean, obviously makes sense, because if you have other people in your life telling you all the time, or I mean, and again, I'm not saying it's in the most obvious way. It might not be people implicitly telling you that you are less, though that is the case sometimes. It can manifest in people's actions. It can manifest in very subtle body languages, especially if it's family, if it's your parents. It can really weigh on you, and it can destroy your mind in a way to have other people and have the people around you constantly bringing you down, even if it's subtle. I mean, it's no wonder that you find a negative comparison to other people if the people that you interact with most in your life are literally reinforcing it on a nearly daily basis. So, although it's easier said than done, you should really try and analyze what you can do about different relationships. So in general, you have three options if a relationship is negative. You have cutting off a friendship, relationship, romantic relationship, whatever it might be, cutting it off entirely. Again, not always possible, but if you try and do it, you can. Building distance in a relationship. This is maybe applicable for parents or something like that, with really abusive parents where you can't entirely get rid of them, but you really, it's not good for your sanity to be around them. Or third, communicate and try and make a change and try and get them to do something differently. And again, this goes for both people. It's not just about other people, but communicating um, mutually and trying to come to an agreement if that's applicable and likely to work. That might not necessarily be super applicable for certain types of relationships, but for others it might be. And likewise, if a relationship is positive and you actually find that it helps you, do the opposite of these things. Spend more time with the person, give a person more energy, more time and effort. You might actually find they can help your mental state a lot, like I said, to find the real humanity in relationships and really just invest in other people, because other people are very important and just as important as yourself. And if you're only putting time and energy into things that are personal, things that are your own goals without ever involving other people, then it's obviously going to be very draining and very difficult on the brain, because we automatically are social creatures. So these are the things you can generally try doing. It's not going to be perfect. So when you're applying any of these changes, whatever it might be, I should say, when you're trying to make a change of any kind in anything, there's usually naturally going to be resistance. That's just anything in the brain, in the body. A change, we naturally resist what's different than what we've been doing, and that's totally okay. The point is that you try, that you put an effort in, that you do your best, and again, you should know why you're trying to do something, because sometimes attaching emotion helps create motivation, and motivation can be very important. It's not all about willpowering and forcing yourself through things. That's really not the way most of the time. But even if something isn't perfect, that's okay. If there's some resistance, that's okay. Even if you commit to a change and there's something you really want to do and you have to stop for whatever reason, that's also okay. Because the truth is that when you have these realizations in your brain and you actually sit down and examine some of these thoughts yourself, you'll actually realize that, what? Sorry, when you have some of these thoughts and you actually sit down and realize with yourself, you'll actually realize that this is literally your whole life. Like, this is your life. There really isn't anything bigger than this. So when you start to analyze your thoughts, you'll see some simplicity and some happiness, but it could also be scary in some ways. So take time if you need to. Don't feel like you need to make this rapid change or anything all at once. But keep in mind that there really isn't any quitting in this, because there is no quitting life. So this is actually something that's essentially forever. And it's even for people who pursue this permanently or quote unquote good at it, it's for life, and the improvement is pretty much for life. That's not to say that you can't seek a more short-term goal or seek some short-term progress, but that's not the point of it necessarily. So if things aren't perfect, if anything, they shouldn't be perfect, because you're pushing out of your comfort zone. You should see it as a good thing if you find some difficulty in what you're doing, again, within moderation and to an extent. So if you find additional help, if you find you need additional help with anything, any of the topics that we mentioned, and like I said, I only touched on a lot of things because I don't have I don't know how long this video is already. We're nearing the end of it, but I'm not watching a clock, so I'm not sure exactly how much time I've spent so far. But even with all the time I've already spent, I touched on a lot of topics that are just simply incomplete the way I've said them. So in line with experimentation and all these other things, and so experimentation and critical thinking, you should actually try and seek other resources. This could be online on YouTube as well. This could be people in your life. This could be written texts of some kind, books, whatever it might be. Finding fresh perspectives and having other people, because again, any other source you find is just another person. Life is all a game of people. That's all it is. But it can be tremendously helpful. And again, take everything you see with a grain of salt, and take everything I'm just saying you should think of everything critically and not take any one source for face value. But sources can be very, very helpful. So really, try and expose yourself to a lot of them. But in the end, what actually matters is what's going on in your brain. And I know it's kind of ironic because I've just told you a lot of advice, and I'm telling you that advice of other people is often not the most important thing, but a little bit paradoxical. Hopefully, you get what I'm getting at, that you should just be very critical and keep in mind what it is that actually occurs in your head and the thoughts that actually drive you, because that's what really matters. So just know that this is absolutely worth it in the long term. So hopefully I've convinced you on a few things that matter. Again, you're equally valuable to all the people around you. You should be kind in your relationships. You should do all these great things. But hopefully the structure of this video and the way I've chaptered it out, it's rewatchable in some way so that you can get extra value out of it later if you find that you're just watching through it right now, or you're watching this in multiple sittings or anything like that. But be nice to the people around you and take care of everybody around you, because it's kind of our responsibility as people. So do what you can.